Hi, and welcome to this edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. Our mission here at Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live well in spite of your mental health challenge by sharing insights through interviews, practical tools for living well, encouragement, and courage for overcoming all from a Christian perspective. And now, here's your host, Pastor Brad Hoefs.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to Fresh Hope for Mental Health. I'm Brad Hoefs, your host. Our purpose here on Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live a faith-filled, rich, and full life in spite of having a mental health diagnosis. So, my friends, I thought I'd just spend a little time with you talking about something that recently I'm just spending a lot of time thinking about. I've spent the better the better amount of my life receiving criticism. Well, let's put it this way, not so well. I haven't been all that good at receiving it. Sometimes if I'm receiving criticism, it goes deep into my heart and wounds me. Other times it makes me angry and I get defensive. And I haven't always been the best at receiving criticism, especially when it's from somebody that maybe I struggle with. Anyway, I've come across some material recently that talks about how to receive criticism and how to take it like a champ. And, sometimes it does feel like somebody just pops you one in the mouth when you're receiving criticism. So I want to talk to you today about some simple perspectives on how to take criticism and to receive it well, like a champ. First of all, listen to everyone, no matter how painful the criticism might feel. Just because it feels that way doesn't mean it's true. And secondly, listen, but try to not let it go in. And certainly, if it's painful and it's somebody that can't be trusted and they're really out to hurt you, then you should just stop and say, I'm sorry, I'm not able to do this. But if it's just that you're hearing criticism from somebody, uh, just listen and evaluate later. Don't evaluate as you're listening. Acknowledge when somebody makes good points when they're giving you criticism. In other words, say to them, hey, I think that's something for me to think about, or I think, you may be right about that. Now, thirdly, admit when you make mistakes and learn from them. I think that's one of the major things that happens when you are raised in a family of shame. What happens is everybody blames, and so if you get blamed, you have to be able to defend yourself, right? And say, well, blah 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 blah, and that's why I did this, and blah blah blah. The reality is that it's okay. Everybody makes mistakes, and you learn from them. Also, realize that you can disagree with someone without being disrespectful. You can say, well, I certainly hear what you're saying. I think I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree with it. And uh, you can disagree, but you don't have to be disrespectful, and you don't have to get into that, you're saying this because blah, blah, blah. But to just say, I don't agree with what you're saying. The next thing is to depersonalize criticism by not identifying with it. Oh boy, this is a major thing for most of us. How to not take things personally. And part of that is to just simply listen. And and sometimes I have found myself, if I'm receiving criticism, to really just listen to it, and almost as though they're saying this about somebody else, just depersonalize it, don't take it personally, and just listen. And it does help. It really does help. Now, The other thing is that remember, not everybody's opinion is correct, nor does everybody know what's best for you. So they may be giving you criticism that is actually telling you more about them than it's telling you about you. So you have to remember, not everybody's always right, nor do they always know what is best for you. Anyone also who has done anything significant, anyone who's doing things with their life is going to have critics. It's a good symptom that you're actually making a difference. Um, Everybody who's done anything major in life always has great critics, or anything great, they have critics. And critics are a sign that you're making a difference. And so sometimes you have to take, especially negative criticism that's not fair or meant to hurt. Sometimes you just have to take it and smile and say, that's really a backhanded compliment. And, take it like that. Um, Another thing is you have to know the difference between your core values and when you are just being stubborn, you know. Now, I don't know about you, but I have been known to be a stubborn fool sometimes. Just in the genetics, I think, or in the genes. I used to think it was just people who were of Northern European persuasion, but I have found this to be true of almost every people group. It's easy to dig your heels in and be stubborn about something when in fact you kind of are like, well, that's a core value. No, I think I'm just being stubborn. Next, try your best never to resort to personal attacks or insults on the person that's giving you the criticism. Even if they may hurl some insults at you, or maybe, and like I said before, if somebody's really being rude and they're meaning to be hurtful, and it's very clear, then sometimes you just have to dismiss yourself because taking criticism like a champ does not mean that you let somebody abuse you verbally, not at all. Um, so you have to protect yourself in that sense, but certainly don't try and come back at them with any insults and that kind of stuff. Simply dismiss yourself. But if they are giving you criticism, negative or not, and they're not meaning to hurt you personally or intending to knock you down to size, try your best to not give criticism back to them at that point. Try to not take it as a personal or giving them some kind of personal attack or throwing an insult at them. Next, you can understand another person's view without necessarily agreeing with them. And so I find it a challenge sometimes when somebody's sharing with me their view. I find it kind of in a weird sort of way, I find it interesting to try to just understand where they're coming from. Sometimes people speak a different language than I do. And so I just have a hard time. It sounds like gobbledygook to me sometimes. And so when it sounds like gobbledygook or it's just not making sense, I try to get behind what they're saying and understanding it. That doesn't mean I have to agree with them. It just means I understand what they're saying. Um, the other thing is I think it's important for you and me to understand that criticism is necessary for growth many times. Uh, Consider it feedback for growth. Um, we learn in the education system. Teachers criticize us or give us a critique, and that's all good and good for us. It helps us develop and become more. And so it can be really good for personal growth. Now, the next one is actively encourage others to give you healthy critiques. Ask them, would you mind critiquing my presentation for today, or in the workplace, or even in the family? Or you could even ask your spouse, could you give me some honest feedback about how I'm doing in this area or that area? Um, Taking criticism like a champ ultimately takes practice and experience. The more comfortable you get in your own skin and the less you take things personally, I think the easier it is to take criticism. Well, I hope this little topic's been helpful to you. Um, we really would love to hear from you at Fresh Hope for Mental Health. And you can email me, Pastor Brad, at freshhope.us. You can email insights, questions, other topics you'd like to see covered. And our podcast website is Fresh Hope for Mental Health. You can use FOR or the number 4 in that. We're on all the social media platforms and things like that. And if you would do me a favor, if you're receiving this podcast through iTunes, would you mind writing an honest review of the program? We'd really appreciate it, and it helps others to find it. We have 2 books out. One is called Fresh Hope, Living Well in Spite of a Mental Health Diagnosis, and the other one is called Holding to Hope, and this one's for the loved ones. It's called Holding to Hope, Staying Sane While Loving Someone with a Mental Illness. Be sure to tell your friends about this program, and until the next time, may the Lord fill you with His hope, fresh and new daily. I'm Brad Hoefs, and this has been another edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health.
You've been listening to Fresh Hope for Mental Health. If you have an opportunity, please review, share, and subscribe to the Fresh Hope for Mental Health podcast on iTunes or on the service that you use. We encourage you to share our podcast on social media with your friends and family. Previous podcasts of Fresh Hope for Mental Health can be found at freshhopeformentalhealth.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and iTunes. Fresh Hope is one of the leading networks of faith-based peer support groups internationally. For more information about Fresh Hope, go to freshhope.us.